Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice of Radio. And today, I wanted to show you a fun deck, which did do well in a Japanese tournament, a big tournament, though it didn't win. But I show you a lot of Japanese decks at the moment, which, well, you can't always play yourself. Some of them are a little bit away from being legal over here. So I thought, you know what? It's time I showed you a deck you can play, even though it's been doing well over in Japan. Although actually, now I've said it, that is a little bit of a lie, because unfortunately, this is Japan's extra format where Puzzle of Time hasn't been banned. And you kind of need Puzzle of Time. Now, just to be clear, you can play this deck without Puzzle of Time. And you can add in a bunch of extra fancy trainers. There's a whole bunch of one-off trainers. You can add a bunch more of those. It's still a fun deck without it. But for the sake of transparency at the beginning of the video, this deck does play Puzzle of Time. Sorry, I kind of lied. But as you can hear, my voice is croaky. I'm a little bit under the weather, so let's just forgive each other and move on. Now, this is an expanded deck, and it's all built around Crobat and Shaymin. And don't worry, ladies and gentlemen, we'll go through the deck as we go along, and I'll show you the deck list at the end. And it's been a while since we talked about some of these cards. These cards have been around for a while. They're still legal and expanded, and gosh darn it, I think they're still pretty gosh darn good. So, Crobat then, it's not actually just about Crobat. It's also about Golbat. Golbat, when you evolve up into it, you drop 2 damage counters. And Crobat, when you evolve up into it, you drop 3 damage counters. That's a lot, ladies and gentlemen. It doesn't sound like a lot initially, I'll give you that. But all you need is a couple of turns of dropping 2 damage counters and 3 damage counters, and it adds up very quickly indeed. And of course, for newer players, that's kind of like Frogadier and Greninja GX. Which is weird because, of course, when those cards were revealed, I was telling you, hey, that's just like Golbat and Crobat. Oh, how we've all come full circle. The thing is, they don't have great attacks. Crobat for a single colourless energy does 10 damage to all of your opponent's Pokemon. Crobat for 1 colourless energy does 20 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon. And don't get me wrong, it's expanded. We can use Dimension Valley, Whoop, etc. And then it's free. But they're not particularly good attacks. But that's alright. Because what we do is we basically make up for it by winning the prize race and drawing a whole bunch of cards. Now, there is one other crucial Pokemon to this particular thing, and it's Shaymin EX. Yeah, that one. Shaymin EX was played largely because it had an amazing ability and is played a lot by a lot of people. When you put it from your hand onto your bench, you drew until you had 6 cards in your hand. That's good, whichever way you look at it. Downside of Shaymin, it's got 110 HP and gives up 2 prizes. That is not good, no matter which way you look at it. The good news is it had an attack for just a double colourless energy that did 30 damage and bounced it back to your hand, which is good no matter which way you look at it. But the problem is, it's not enough damage. So what would generally happen is you'd play Shaymin and you'd really want to bounce it back to your hand, but you'd be using other attackers instead. 30 damage doesn't do enough. But that's okay, because we got Golbat and Crobat. So the theory here is very simple. Golbat and Crobat, they sit there doing the extra damage. So if you can get 1 Golbat, 1 Crobat, that's 50 damage. With Shaymin, that's 80 damage. And then we got Muscle Band here. Now, you do play Choice Band as well, but the thing is, Choice Band is only EXs and GXs. Muscle Band might do an extra 20 rather than an extra 30, but it does an extra 20 to anyone, which makes it absolutely worth checking out and chucking in here. So now, with 1 Golbat, 1 Crobat, and a Muscle Band, you're now doing 80 damage during your turn. But the other key thing is, you're not actually ever giving up 2 prizes. Shaymin should never stay on the board here. Shaymin just goes down and then goes back off again. Shaymin doesn't stay around. Because if you leave Shaymin on the field for 1 turn, your opponent can drop a Guzma, KO it. You done, ladies and gentlemen. You done. That's a very bad thing. Now, there are a couple of other Pokemon we play here. Obviously, Ditto Prism Star. It's just a 5th Zubat. Simple as that. It's alright. Useful. But the other thing we play here is the Larvitar from Lost Thunder. You see, the Larvitar from Lost Thunder is actually crazy good. Because for a double colorless energy, 10 damage, but if your opponent's active Pokemon has 3 or more damage on it, you do 80. And let's not forget the Shaymin does 3 damage, and Crobat does 3 damage. Golbat incidentally only does 2, so it won't activate it straight away. But if you've dropped either a Crobat or you've used a Shaymin, then you just sit there smashing. And you're doing 80 damage for a double colorless energy. Incidentally, the energy line in this deck, just a double colorless energy. Just 2 colorless energy, 4 times. That is all you're playing. But you don't need to attack with Golbat and Crobat. And if you do, you can use it. Shaymin attacks for a double colorless, but you bounce it straight back to your hand so it never stays on the field to get discarded. And Larvitar attacks for a double colorless energy. And the other thing is that this is consistent. Because what you really want to be doing is using your Golbat and your Crobat, but picking them up and reusing them. And you can do all of that, ladies and gentlemen, because Shaymin draws you cards. Now, in terms of the trainer line here, there is a lot to dig into because there's a lot of good stuff. Now, the one thing I do need to show you right at the beginning here, we play RoboSub. RoboSub is awesome. RoboSub, you pop it in the active, and it just chills. It's a 30 HP Pokemon, but it doesn't give up a prize. So not only are you doing extra damage with Crobat and Golbat, and then drawing cards with Shaymin, but you're then sticking a RoboSub up. And yeah, your opponent can Guzma, but you've still got RoboSub for next turn. And yeah, your opponent can Escape Rope, but you still got RoboSub for next turn. Sooner or later, your opponent's going to run out of ways to get it at the active. And here's the silly thing. You're not actually giving up 1 prize a turn. A lot of the time, you're giving up no prizes, which is crazy good. And when you do have to put a non-RoboSub in the active, Crobat's got 130 HP, a resistance to fighting, and free retreat. It's really not that bad, ladies and gentlemen. It is really not that bad at all. So to run through the rest of the trainers then, we're using Bridget as our, well, really our supporter of choice in the early game. Grab 3 basic Pokemon. It's great. It is wonderful for consistency, and you need to spam Zubats in the early game. 4 copies of N, just because it's a really nice shuffle draw card. And also, in the early game, you're likely to go down a couple of prizes while you build up damage on your opponent's side of the board, then take multiple prizes at once. That sounds like the kind of deck where N is pretty good. 1 copy of Cynthia just for shuffle draw other than that. And 4 copies of Teammates. When your opponent KOs a Pokemon, you get to search for any 2 cards. Oh yeah, you know that RoboSub I mentioned earlier? You play it as if it were a 30 HP basic Pokemon. When it gets KO'd, it activates Teammates. 1 copy of Guzma because, you know, Dragon Pokemon out the active. It's fun. 4 copies of Versus Seeker because, you know what? You need to be able to reuse your supporters. There we go. 4 copies of Ultra Ball because it searches out any of your Pokemon. That's pretty important. 1 copy of Enhanced Hammer to remove special energy. That's pretty nice. 1 copy of Counter Catcher. As I've said, you'll often be behind on prizes. This is a free gusting effect. 1 copy of Field Blower to get rid of tools. That's kind of nice, especially Floatstone and Expanded. Because if you can strand stuff in the active, whittle it down with Shaymin while hitting the bench with Golbat and Crobat, that's pretty phenomenal. We've got 1 copy of Rescue Stretcher to get some of your Pokemon back, which might be useful. 2 copies of Muscle Band, 1 copy of Choice Band, as we previously mentioned. And the stadium we want to play around with here is Shrine of Punishment. You put 1 damage counter on each Pokemon EX and GX between turns. Even if you've got a Shaymin on the field, it will take a long time to get KO'd by Shrine of Punishment. But you shouldn't really have a Shaymin on the field. We talked about this quite a bit so far. I think I've made my point. But now we have to circle back to the whole, and I did mention this earlier, for Puzzle of Time. The question is, this is Japan's extra format, where they're allowed to play Puzzle of Time. We're not. Puzzle of Time is banned. Can you play this without Puzzle of Time? Well, one of the ridiculous things Puzzle of Time allows you to do is reuse your ace spec, which is Scoop Up Cyclone. Scoop Up Cyclone is ridiculous. Scoop Up Cyclone lets you pick up one of your Pokemon in play. Now, you could just play Super Scoop Up, but that's on a coin flip. This just picks it up, which is a pain because you might not always hit heads. And don't get me wrong, right? If you play this is still your ace spec of choice, but Puzzle of Time lets you get it back. The other thing Puzzle of Time is really good for here is Robo Sub. Gets you extra Robo Sub. Now, you've got a whole bunch of one-off item cards that can be reused with Puzzle of Time, but really, as I'm looking at this, the best uses for Puzzle of Time are Scoop Up Cyclone and Robo Sub. So can you play it without Puzzle of Time? And the answer is yes, of course you can. Just play some extra Super Scoop Up. Maybe some extra Counter Catcher. You can make this work. It will be a weaker deck because you can't use essentially free Scoop Up Cyclone and 6 to 8 Robo Sub. But it's still absolutely possible. I still love this deck, and you can still go and play it and expand it, and I think you should all give it a go because it's a lot of fun. You just have to take the Puzzle of Time out and play some other tricks. I believe in you, ladies and gentlemen. I believe in you. I would also like to hear from you, so please let me know what you think about this deck in the comment section. Go nuts, but please do remember the rule. Be nice, would ya? And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, and follow me on Twitter @TheWassy, where we talk about, well, a whole bunch of games, like Pokemon. Oh yeah, and if you want to support the channel, patreon.com/PTCGRadio, and for some live action, twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. But by far, also check out youtube.com/WassyPlays. It's that other channel I do, and I talk about other games, and it's awesome. But by far, the most important thing is always, look after yourselves till next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.